everyone, Rob here with the Ark of Father Time. And yes, it has absolutely been a while. I've been working. I broke my toe. That's just barely healing up right now. It's been like 10 weeks. And if you've ever broken a toe, it takes a while to heal, that's for sure. And it's really hard to get it back to normal. So I'm just barely walking around now and trying to see if it is normal. It's been okay, so we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to talk today about something that I believe that is very interesting because a lot of people, I believe, are kind of confused on what the meaning of it is. And today we're going to talk about sin and what is sin. And I think that's such an important topic because a lot of people get triggered just by hearing the word, especially people that aren't really close to Christ. And so they have this belief or perception that sin is just this general term that doesn't really have meaning other than what we emotionally attribute to it. True, but there is still a creation that's going on. And because there's a creation, there's an intentional, let's say, meaning to everything that somehow applies to us. And yes, that application appears different in different moments of our life. For instance, you might take sin very seriously after finding Christ, but didn't really know what it was before you found Christ, or you had an idea of what it was, but you didn't put the time and effort into understanding it to know what the quote unquote right or wrong things to do are. So, with that being said, this is for entertainment purposes only. Yes, I'm giving away certain things that not everybody will get to hear. Christ says, if they have ears, let them hear. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't have ears. And that's okay. And we should, get into the world's on fire out there. I don't I mean, everywhere I go, it seems to be fine. But you see that there's a lot of discourse going on in reality, and there's so much to talk about with that. But and I do think we should talk about politics. I'll probably talk about politics, pretty soon. And I do want to start recording a lot more. But and because now I have some free time, and I'm super excited about having some free time to actually spread the word, spread the message, talk about the glory of Jesus Christ and what that means to me and what that means to the world and what that means to our future, because it is important to know, what the future holds, and the Bible is very much of an instruction manual of exactly how reality works, how the minds of our leaders work, and how the Spirit exists within all of us, and how we should have an understanding of what is going on in reality, so we don't get caught in the trap and burn in the world around us as we traverse it, because it is difficult, especially when you're someone with love and compassion and empathy and wants to see the world a better place. But that's something that you can work on proactively. It's something that you can make a difference in. But today, we're talking about sin. And what is sin? And I hope I blow your mind early and we have a fun little conversation, because I'm going to try to make it as quick as possible. So we're in a synthesis, a reality that God created with intention. And I think people that believe already kind of know this. They know this through the Genesis creation. And God has a purpose and a meaning behind every single action that happens in reality. Now, let's talk about what sin is. I'm going to write a little bit of this down. I love using the board. It's a fun little tool to have, and I got it blocked out. Yeah, I got the Yeti here blocking it for me, so I know exactly where I can write. Because I'm kind of tight in little space here. I want to do some green screen stuff. So I have a green screen set up. You can actually see it through the blackboard there. Yeah, it's not your eyes doth not deceive you. That is green over there. Everything that has ever come out of this world that you see was created by a sinner. Nobody was their worst action. Everything you see was their ability to overcome their sin, let's say. And not that it looked perfect on paper or that they were just the greatest people ever, but they contributed themselves with completion in a way that contributes to the world and allows it to become a better place. And they're all sinners. Every single one of them. Every single one of them did something that we would go, oh, that's horrible. I don't ever want to, use your television. I've used that example before. Use your television because you kicked a puppy back in, 1892. And it's like, okay. There are reasons why we invent, and there's reasons why we forgive, and there's reasons why we sin. And that's a huge part of what I want to talk about. A lot of people sin and they cause problems in the world, and we sin out of selfishness and our belief that we are kind of alone in our own head and that our thoughts aren't being projected outward, when we know that just through love and grace and walking with that love of Christ allows us to see a difficult world in a much better light. And so sin, God created a synthesis. In the synthesis, we have Genesis, where there's a full completion of the creation of the earth. And then he creates Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve, through their sin, through their selfishness, in their ignorance, they don't create a thesis, a synthesis. They stop short out of pleasure, out of physicality. We do this all the time. Everything is a sin. Everything is some sort of action, okay? Now, it's when that action has an intention that has a completion. So we have sin. Oh, goodness. Here we go. We have sin. And we have sin thesis. Thesis. What is a thesis? Well, a thesis is when you can make an argument for some form of action and justify it and say what the reason behind it is. It's like, well, I'm going to create a medication, and that medication is going to make people feel better, and maybe that medication will heal people. That is my argument, my synthesis for that particular medication, right? Well, there is also what we know as deadly sin. Right? Now, deadly sin is like if you're into the neighbor's, wife or husband or something, you're thinking physical, you're thinking, about, very physical thoughts towards them, and you act upon. Now, just thinking about it is the sin, right? Now, normally you're not thinking, oh, I'm gonna, go and, start a whole new life with these people. A lot of times it's for a very physical, interaction. And so you're just in sin, you're without synthesis. There's nothing good that can come out of it. And because it wasn't intentional, because it wasn't God's plan, because we are being selfish and thinking about a materialism within ourselves, we end up creating a deadly sin. It's the wages of sin is death, right? And so what we're doing is we're not completing an intentional or godly picture. We're creating a selfish photo opposed to a movie that has a nice beginning, middle, and an end, right? We're thinking of just a physical moment, and because we're thinking of that physical moment, we end up creating a deadly sin, and whether you act that out or whether you don't, doesn't matter. You can go and act it out, and then, horrible things happen, you end up, dying, or you can think it in your mind and slowly dissipate. Sin is a synthesis without the thesis, without the good in the beginning, the understanding of why you are creating the action, how it's going to interact with the reality around you, and what the end result of that is. It's really simple. It's, for example, I was full of sin When I before I died, I was on sets a lot, and I would think about and I wasn't married, but I was in a relationship, and I would often think, am I in the right place? Should I be with this person? Should I be with that person? I was always around attractive people. I didn't act those things out, but in my mind, I was always half in and half out of my relationship, which is why I hadn't been married at the time. I knew that about myself, that I just wasn't someone that was stable. If you look into my past, you understand why I had a very unstable life even after becoming an adult. And so when we understand that, we can understand how much sin we're putting out into the world. It doesn't have to be that you're philandering and you're thinking of other people. It could just be simply just our desire to start something and then not finish it. To want to do this and want to do that, and I'm guilty of it. We've all done a million things that we thought we were really interested in, and then we decided that we weren't. We don't put the effort into actually getting really good at it, whatever that is. Let's say you want to be an artist. A lot of people think, well, I'm just not, artistically, creative. I'm not able to express myself in the way that I might want to. And so you might start getting into art and then not thinking that you have enough, natural talent in order to actually get good at it, when this has nothing to do with it. All art, all music, I don't care if you're a horrible singer, if you put enough effort into it, you will be a good singer. It's just the nature of falling in love with something, a gift that God might have given you, and deciding to see it to fruition. And so whenever I died, I started writing music, completing the songs. I started doing art. I started writing short stories because it was a lot easier for me to write short stories opposed to trying to write novels. So I love writing short stories. I don't publish them. I think they're like Black Mirror, where they're just a little too spot on to reality, and I don't think it's always fair to be able to see the future in the way that I'm able to see it and to just take advantage of it. So I try to be very personal. I try to tell my very personal story about my life. So my music tends to come from my life. My art comes from my prayers. I want to create and complete, but I don't have this desire to sell it. And it's not that I'm not interested in making some money. Of course, we could all use a little bit of money in this reality, but what is most important is to share my creation and my completion with the art that I have, with the people that I love. The biggest part of my sin, I think, was my incompletion with the relationship with my children. I hadn't met my children when I died in Burbank in March of 2016. I had seen my children when they were very, very, very young, trying to somehow have a relationship with their mother, who had, other things going on as well in her life. We were very young, and so I go to Hollywood to try to become this great thing, so maybe I can meet them, and it didn't work out because my mind was always short of the synthesis. It's like, ain't no rest for the wicked until you close your eyes for good. It's the reality that people think, like, close your eyes for forever, like, ain't no rest for the wicked until you close your eyes forever. No, there's no rest for the wicked because you're wicked. We're burning at the wick. It's to know that to close your eyes for good is to know that what you're doing now is to create something because it comes from a part of your past, to complete it and to give it away. Then you can close your eyes. We are incomplete. And because we're incomplete, we're unable to hit to the next side. That's what happens with NDEers. A lot of NDE experiencers, every single one of them was left here to complete something. And I was so blessed in the sense that God had a very specific message to give. I'm sitting there dying, and then I'm given a little message that says, you're not going to die for good, or you're not going anywhere. You're staying right here, and you have a message to give to your family and to the people, which is that God is love, grace, and mercy. That's it. When we understand that everybody's caught in sin and unable to finish the synthesis, we have to start creating synthesis in order for people to see that, oh, that's what creating and completing is. That's what accepting your past and giving it away is. That is what telling your story is. It doesn't have to be you just, dropping a dime on your parents' bad parenting. You can literally just write a story and give it away as a novel that has everybody in different names and different characters, and you're just using a little bit of your life in order to get creative and make something interesting that falls into the culture of this world in a positive way. Because culture, a whole other video, of course, but culture is a cult. It is this understanding that whatever they say is the way that it is, and that's absolutely not true. What I am saying right now is you must create and complete. And to have compassion for all those unable to see it, or they don't have ears to hear. I got huge ears. I can hear you breathing right now. I'm just kidding. I can't hear you breathing. But when you have all that weight behind you, and you give it all to God, and you start creating and letting some of that weight come off by His inspiration, and you're walking in the steps that He is preparing for you, as Christ carries us along in this world. There's no better way of experiencing this world. To know that you've had that pressure and to know that you've given it away to the true one and only God, there's nothing greater. Let's talk about, Christ for a second. It is finished. That's the thesis. That's the synthesis. That's the reality. Get back Satan. To know that there, if he doesn't die for our sins, that it will not be finished. It will not be complete. We will continue to struggle in our understanding of what God has created this world for. But He gave us His Son. It's a real thing. It's through that Son that we are able to experience life in this everlasting way. And when you accept that God gave us His Son, you have everlasting life. You can take the word death out of your vocabulary, because that's ridiculous. The way that we fear death, the way that we fear what the next place might be, is because we don't have the thesis, the synthesis, the reasoning on why we're creating the argument for the life that we're deciding to put forth to the world. I'm going to have to watch this again to see if I said anything that made sense, but the reality is that sin is synthesis without the thesis. It's without the understanding of why you're doing something, how it's going to be brought back to the world, and what the end result of that is. Walk with Christ, walk with God, walk with the love, grace, and mercy that He gives to you every day. And yes, it's hard to feel that. It's hard to understand that. But if you woke up this morning, there is a reason why you're here. We should do some fun ones next. Anyway, I'm Rob. This is the Ark of Father Time, and I hope that you have an amazing, wonderful, blessed day. Thank you.